The late 1920s saw the height of gang violence across America. With mobsters like Al Capone and gangsters like Bonnie and Clyde terrorizing the country, it seemed like law enforcement was losing the war on crime. But there was one group whose violent reign instilled more fear than any other, and their crimes, which went unsolved for years, would end up creating a new government agency and change America forever. This is the story of the Osage Reign of Terror and the birth of the FBI. The Osage Nation were the wealthiest people in the world. When the U.S. government forcibly moved the Osage Nation from their ancestral lands in Kansas to a reservation in Oklahoma in the 1870s, the location seemed like a cruel joke. The reservation consisted of over 150,000 acres of rocky land with little arable land and no oil. But underneath this barren surface lay one of the largest oil deposits in the United States. When oil was discovered in the area in the early 1900s, the Osage suddenly found themselves sitting on a gold mine. In order to protect their newfound wealth, the Osage created a system of Headrights. Headrights were shares in the tribe's mineral trust, and each allottee, a person on the tribal roll, received one headright, which entitled them to a portion of the oil lease royalties. Headrights couldn't be bought or sold. They could only be inherited. This meant that the Osage were getting richer by the minute, with the Osage Nation becoming the richest people per capita in the world. By the early 1920s, Osage Nation members were building large homes, owning multiple luxury cars, and sending their children to study in Europe. For the first time in their history, the Osage were living better than most white Americans, but this wealth made them a target. Starting around 1921, a series of suspicious deaths began to plague the Osage community in what became known as the Reign of Terror. Over the next 2 years, at least dozens and potentially hundreds of Osage were killed, and the way they were dying was unsettling. People were turning up poisoned, shot, dead from mysterious falls, or found floating in lakes. Their deaths were often made to look like accidents, suicides, or the result of natural causes. Some were killed by strychnine in their whiskey, others shot in the back of the head. Several were pushed from windows or cliffs, while some died in suspicious house fires. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like a bad episode of Law and Order, but this was a nightmare that plagued the Osage community for nearly 2 years, leaving entire families wiped out. What made it even worse was that the Osage were helpless. See, Oklahoma had deemed all Osage people legally incompetent. As a result, each Osage was assigned a white guardian who controlled their finances and business dealings. These guardians, often powerful local businessmen and lawyers, systematically stole from their Osage wards, charging exorbitant fees for simple transactions. This legalized theft created an environment where murder was the next logical step to gain control of the Headrights. After several prominent Osage were killed, the Osage Tribal Council pleaded for help from the federal government. The investigation would fall to the Bureau of Investigation, the predecessor to the FBI, and one man, J. Edgar Hoover. When J. Edgar Hoover became director of the Bureau of Investigation in 1924, he took on a reputation for scandal and ineffectiveness. Not only did the BOI lack many of the forensic capabilities we associate with law enforcement today, but its personnel were often unqualified and corrupt. There were only 367 employees, less than half of whom were special agents. Moreover, these agents were poorly trained, earning just $20 a month and receiving less than 10 hours of training before hitting the field. Given this inadequate preparation, it's no surprise that the BOI had failed to solve any major cases. But Hoover believed the Osage case was his chance to reform the Bureau's image, prove its effectiveness, and increase its power. From the moment he took on the case, Hoover was determined to succeed. He immediately dispatched a team of agents to Oklahoma to begin gathering intelligence. And unlike local law enforcement, Hoover wanted to do things right. He knew that if the investigation was going to have any hope of working, the agents needed to blend in. So he sent a Native American agent named John Wren and a former Texas Ranger named Tom White to Oklahoma undercover. White posed as a cattle buyer, while other agents pretended to be insurance salesmen or oilmen. Working undercover was a radical idea for American law enforcement at the time, but it paid off. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the killings were part of a larger conspiracy involving some of the most powerful people in the Osage community. The investigation was fraught with peril. At one point, a hit was taken out on the team's undercover informant, Molly Burkhart, with her family already having been targeted in the Reign of Terror. But the BOI persisted, and after months of painstaking work, they uncovered the plot. The mastermind behind the conspiracy was William K. Hale, known as the King of the Osage Hills. Hale was a wealthy rancher who had ingratiated himself with the Osage. His nephew, Ernest Burkhart, was married to Molly Burkhart, an Osage woman from a family with significant Headrights. Together, they had devised a plan to systematically murder Molly's family so that Ernest, and thus Hale himself, would inherit the Headrights. They hired killers, including John Ramsey and Asa Ace Kirby, to carry out the murders. The team infiltrated Molly's family, carrying out their hits and collecting their rewards. Then came the trial of the century. The trials of Hale, Burkhart, and Ramsey were national spectacles. Hale, who was defended by a battery of high-profile attorneys, used his wealth and influence to stall for time, employing multiple appeals and orchestrating witness intimidation and murder. But the BOI's case was airtight, and convictions were secured. Ernest Burkhart confessed and turned state's evidence, testifying against Hale and Ramsey. Ultimately, both men were convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. However, there was a dark twist to the tale. In a controversial move, Hale was paroled in 1947 after serving 24 years. Ernest Burkhart was later pardoned by the Oklahoma governor, angering many in the Osage Nation who felt justice had not been served. Nevertheless, the investigation's impact was undeniable. When J. Edgar Hoover took over the BOI, it was a scandal-ridden joke of an organization mocked by the press and ignored by the public. But by the time the Osage case was complete, all that had changed. The successful prosecution of a powerful crime conspiracy in one of the most racially charged environments imaginable had showcased the BOI's ability to fight crime and uphold justice. Hoover aggressively publicized the case and the BOI's role in solving it, portraying the Bureau as a modern, scientific, and effective crime-fighting force. This public relations coup led to increased funding, a larger budget, and expanded jurisdiction for the BOI, allowing it to tackle bigger cases and evolve into the FBI we know today. The Osage investigation also provided a template for future investigations, emphasizing the importance of forensic evidence, undercover work, and meticulous record-keeping. Furthermore, the case established the federal government's role in investigating major crimes on tribal lands and crimes where local authorities are corrupt or ineffective. Finally, the notoriety and success of the Osage case and other cases under Hoover paved the way for the Bureau of Investigation to be renamed the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 1935. Sadly, the legacy of the Osage is one of tragedy and resilience. The Reign of Terror wiped out hundreds of Osage citizens and left a scar on the tribe that continues to this day. But their story also played a pivotal role in the creation of the modern FBI, an institution that has shaped American law enforcement for nearly a century. In recent years, the story has been brought back to national attention by David Grann's best-selling book Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI, which was later adapted into a major film directed by Martin Scorsese and starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro. The film, which premiered in October 2023, is a powerful testament to the strength and resilience of the Osage people and the importance of seeking justice for those who have been silenced. If you want to learn more about the Osage Nation or watch the movie, please see the resources in the description. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. We'd appreciate it if you could recommend our channel to your friends and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. We love hearing what you have to say, and reading your reviews helps us improve. Also, be sure to follow us on social media to get the latest updates on our videos. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.